We are live, folks. UJ Football Live with JC Shelton. And for our instant takeaways after week one, Georgia's 45-7 win over Marshall. Let's talk about it. If you're new to the show, we did this last year. It was awesome just to talk with you guys after these games live. No film breakdown, nothing. We just react to it. We don't even get to hear from Kirby Smart before we react to it. Let's start with a couple of injuries that we found out about heading into the game. So Daylen Everett was the guy that was seen in a boot in practice after suffering an ankle injury. There was some talk out that it was Jonel Aguero, but it wasn't the case. It was actually Daylen Everett, Georgia's CB1, all SEC corner, wasn't in this game. Gave opportunities for Ellis Robinson and Daniel Harris. Obviously, those two guys were expected to really kind of rotate in that CB2 position, but we got to see them both more today. And then Colby Young was also dealing with an ankle. He actually played today, had some good plays, so he's able to go through that. But Juwan Gaston, the first two freshmen to start for Georgia's offensive line in the season opener since Andrew Thomas, happened to be a top 5 pick in the NFL draft, gets his start and then goes down early. And we're not sure what is ailing him, but it looked like an ankle perhaps or a knee. I hope not either, but he wasn't able to go back. So wondering about him and how that affects Georgia. You know, you lose those guards from a year ago in Dylan Fairchild and Tate Ratledge, and of course the center Jared Wilson. Drew Bobo able to step in that center role pretty flawlessly. Honestly, he was a captain for this game too, so Georgia trusts him. But interesting to see what happens in the guard spots. Michael Morris actually went down for a second too. He's got a big club on his hand, so some concerns there injury wise, but hopefully nothing serious. You know, Georgia recruits really well along the offensive line. Big guys are a premium, right? Kirby Smart talks about it all the time. That's why they recruit so well at that position. So we'll find out more about that later. But for now, let's talk about Gunnar Stockton, okay? First start at home in his career, right? Comes in SEC championship game, does some good things. Georgia gets a win, and then the Notre Dame game as well. So this is his first go-around in Sanford Stadium. Was impressed with his command of the offense, was impressed with him pre-snap. The beginning of the game, he was particularly hot. And, you know, Mike Bobo and the offensive room were planning this, and probably, you know, Arthur Lynch, our co-host, and couldn't be here today, but he talks about how particular Mike Bobo is about beginning games and loves to script things more than a drive, just one, right? So it's easy to assume that maybe the 2 or 3 drives here were scripted, and, you know, things were working really well there for Georgia and Stockton particularly. 11 completions in his first 15 throws. He was using his legs a lot there. Obviously a touchdown on the second drive, third drive as well. Throws one into Zach Branch. Was impressed. I think overall for him, the decision-making and when to tuck it was really nice. The decision-making on speed options, which I think are a really cool part of this offense that Georgia hasn't had. It opens things up, you know, especially when you have a really good receiver room and tight end room, can really open things up. I think he had good decisions there, when to keep it, when to not. And he had really good bursts up the field, right, north and south, but he wasn't taking big hits either. So you always have to think about that as a quarterback. You know, these guys aren't built from iron. It's a long season, so you want him to get down and get out of bounds. He did that a couple times too. One thing I will say overall about his performance is it seemed like he was hesitant when it came to checkdowns, when it was obvious that the checkdown was there and Marshall was playing way deep, right? They were trying to take off the deep shot from a guy like Noah Thomas or Zach Branch, we'll get into in a minute. And he was hesitant to throw it down to Cass Jones or the tight end or the running back there. So I like to see a little bit quicker decision-making there. Inaccurate at certain times. One thing comes to mind is that Lawson Lucky drop. You put it on him and it's probably a first down. It wasn't. It was incompletion. Georgia has to punt. Right. So things were really, really working well in the first half. Kind of slowed down in the second. I like the 2-minute offense there at the end. But then in the third, there were some inconsistencies. And you're going to see this first game, you know, it's not something that we're surprised to see, right? But what you want out of this game, guys, and I know a lot of talk is about the level of competition here. Sure, I would have loved to play like a team like Clemson like we did last year. That's always really, really fun. We saw Texas and Ohio State earlier in the day, which was, I thought, I'm a defensive guy. I thought it was a really cool game to see those guys go at it, especially Julian Sayin and Arch Manning not living up to the hype as far as the first game goes. It was interesting. But you're going to see the offense is they take a little bit of time, we've seen usually. With a talent gap like this, obviously Georgia has a huge upper hand, and I think that's a part of why things look so good early. But as you get into the game and Marshall starts to make adjustments and such, things weren't as easy. And which I think is good, putting Stockton in that position and this offense in that position to where they had to get hard yards. And they were in fourth down situations and third down situations and had to make it work. So overall, though, I think Stockton, man, I think he has what it takes for this team to contend, not only in the SEC, but for a national title in the playoff. And I say that, and there's a lot of, I mean, I'm not alone in that sentiment, I don't think. But the pulse of the fan base, I know there's a lot saying that he is maybe a mid-tier quarterback, which, and I'll say to that is, you think about how this team is built from a defensive perspective, defensive minds there, the talent, the offensive line, the running backs, what they've added to talent-wise on both sides of the ball. And then a mind like Kirby Smart leading the entire thing, the way he's able to motivate his players and keep his players from being complacent and such. Championship football. He's proven it twice, 3 SEC championships to boot. And you go back to when really it was still in the Kirby Smart young era, where you have a guy like Jake Fromm in that situation with Jacob Eason where he has to be thrown in, and he ends up leading Georgia to a national title. Now, in my opinion, I think the same people that are really, really hesitant with Gunnar Stockton are the same people who did not like Jake Fromm, because he's not, he's not a Jaden Daniels, CJ Stroud. He's not that guy. But I think good decisions and then his athleticism from a leg standpoint, and that's all you want, right? You don't want him to beat you. You want him to lose the game for you, which we saw at times with Carson Beck last year with interceptions, and drop passes definitely played a part to those losses too. But you don't want somebody that's going to lose you the game, make good decisions, and get explosive plays when they're there. And I think he did that today. It's a good start. We want to see seasonal work. And honestly, we're not going to learn a lot from Austin Peay next week either. It's at Tennessee in a few weeks, and Tennessee got a big win against Syracuse today. They weren't perfect at all, and we get into that later next week too. But, I think Gunnar Stockton, I'm optimistic about him. We already knew about that. We talked about it, me and Artie, earlier in the week. But all things considered, I think he played well, and really it's just good decisions. And, and I'll end it here with Gunnar is Kirby Smart. End of the game, fourth quarter, Gunnar Stockton had already come out. Ryan Puglisi was in, and the ESPN interview asked him about Gunnar's day. He mentioned his legs twice. Kirby Smart. That really stood out to me because, we saw a bunch of options play. Honestly, too, it needs to be said that Georgia's offense is going to be more vanilla here against Marshall. They don't want to tip their hand to SEC opponents, especially, right? And that's smart. Do not blame it. I'd like that if I was a Georgia fan. But the situation here, I think, is we're going to see a lot of speed options, zone reads, RPOs with Gunnar. I think that's a plan. And just based on how Kirby Smart's talking and how Mike Bobo called that game, we're going to see a lot of that, which is really interesting because, how good this offense was with Stetson Bennett and the players added around him, strengths at tight end, strengths at offensive line, running back, receivers. The receiver room, I think, is better than that time. Obviously, you don't have a guy like Brock Bowers. Zach Branch is the best slot guy you've had since Ladd McConkey. I think that's easy to see for me. Still a lot to be proved. Of course, this was Marshall, but I think he has that talent. So, using that in this offense and really taking away another defender, that's what a run game does with a quarterback. So I'm really optimistic about that. I think Georgia fans should be too. Let's move on to Zach Branch right there off the top. So really excited about him after the spring game and just being on the field and seeing how he moved comparatively to other players. And we see a lot of good players in today's game, man. And you can kind of tell when a guy gets the ball in his hands like him, that's the way he moves. His start-stop quickness, he's up to full speed so quickly that's really hard to stop. In the punt return game, he made some moves that made you think, man, he might take one day. And Georgia, another aspect to a game where you're already a really good special teams program, and adding a really good returner like that, I think is interesting, right? How does Georgia use that to its advantage? I think we're going to see him take some close, maybe go the distance this year. And from a receiver standpoint, his first catch was a routine slant for a first down, and he breaks like 3 tackles and goes for 20 plus. And then obviously the long one towards the end of the game till when his day was done. Just speed, just straight speed, hard to take angles on. So he's your downfield threat. He is a threat beyond just downfield too. Obviously, in the intermediates too, he showed that. So how does that open up things for other Georgia receivers? London Humphreys did some good things, caught a touchdown. Colby Young, I love his size, and then he's a leader. Kirby Smart's talked about him, having him back, an upperclassman, played a lot of football, working back into the offense. Obviously, we talked about his ankle bothering him earlier this week. So how much did that kind of keep him out? But we'll look at the receiving stats right here. Give me a second to bring it up. But I think these guys, there's a lot on these guys after Georgia led the league led the FBS in drop passes last year, right? It's been a big talking point for everyone around this team, and you wanted to see something good from this group. I don't know, obviously you're playing Marshall, so you have to keep that into account here. It's not working here. Let me see. 1 second. And you had that deep shot to Noah Thomas too, that I think Noah Thomas could have got. I don't know if Stockton would take that one back and how long he threw that, but he's obviously has speed on top of a 6'6" frame. Noah Thomas has, so something to watch too. You want to utilize all your weapons, and obviously if one of these guys has a skill set like that, use it to your advantage. And it's really key when you go and play a team like Texas, whose pass defense played really, really well today. I thought really kept Jeremiah Smith in check, did a few different things to chip him off the line and such to keep him from beating you. But overall, I mean, Ohio State's receiving core, and they even had a bunch of drops too. So I don't know if that's first game jitters kind of situation. Will they kind of take off here in a few weeks? Wouldn't be surprising, but Texas and that pass defense is going to be tough to overcome. So you want as many options as you can and not really have to focus on one guy. Colby Young had 2 for 30, long of 24. Ellis Williams, when Ryan Puklitzky came in, and there's a subset of Georgia fans that, and I tweeted this, a subset of Georgia fans who are going to want Ryan Puklitzky to start over Gunnar Stockton because of his arm talent alone. And we've known he can throw like that. It's about more to me. He's like command of the offense, knowing the offense, making quick decisions. I think Gunnar has the upper hand there, and I think that's why he's in the game of the position where he is. But Ellis Williams, welcome to it, right? One of the highest rated tight ends in the country, 6'7", man. He looks like a receiver out there, but I think he can really be a problem. We'll see how long it takes him to kind of come along in the offense, though. London Humphreys had some good things too, right? 3 receptions, caught that touchdown. I'd like to see Lawson Lucky. I know he got that flag, right? His speed is so deceptive. He's able to get behind defenders, right? And because they're so much smaller, they're going to grab. You're probably going to get a flag. And I think Gunnar was smart to even throw that ball too, because I think he saw it as well. Something you can use. Really think Lawson can step up here. And you kind of get lulled to sleep or threatened with certain guys like a Zach Branch and like a Dylan Bell, London Humphreys, and that speed and elusiveness. And then, boom, Lawson Lucky hits you up the seam, and you're like, what the heck happened? So a lot of different things I think Mike Bobo can do, the receiving room and tight end room. Oscar Delp called a 28-yarder, one of the best blocking tight ends in the country. So he's going to have these moments to where he has big plays, but then other games where you don't really call his name. And that's not a bad thing. I mean, the position he's in and how Georgia wants to run the football, which we'll get into next, it's really big for him, I think, to focus in on this blocking. And it's going to be good for his NFL career too. But I think Oscar Delp is really dependable as a blocker, especially in line, and excited for him to maybe put a season together where he can get a good draft pick coming up. But we'll talk running game. So I was really high on this tailback room coming in. If you watched the earlier shows, you would hear that. There's so many kind of different running backs here. I know Kirby Smart doesn't think about it that way. He doesn't say, well, this guy's a bruiser, this guy's elusive. They ask him to do so many different things. We'll start here with Dwight Phillips Jr. Son of a track legend. He's got the speed. He's flashed at times, still young, his second year here, and was really impressed with how they kind of used him, got him out in space. And then you just let his speed cause really angle issues for the defense, because you might have him, you might think you have him, and then he's gone. Again, this is Marshall, so I know the talent discrepancy is big here, but you can't help but get excited about it because he went 5 for 60. That's a 12-yard average, and then the touchdown, 18-yard long. He's your one. If there's one guy who I'm like, yes, he can take it all the way. You get a drive at the 20, you're 25, and he can take it 75. Is Dwight. Nate Frazier, 11:47, 4.3 average. He can really do it all. I think he's a threat in each area. Pass pro was a really concern last year, and then ball security didn't have any problems with that today. I don't think. I'll have to look back the tape, of course, and this is instant reaction, so we don't get a chance to. But Nate Frazier has the potential to be that next Georgia great back, I think. We'll have to see that, of course, when SEC play gets here. He's going to be a bell cow. Let's see how he plays. Chauncey Bowens, another guy who kind of gets overlooked, but then always makes plays when he's given the chance, I think. He had a longer 21. It's actually the longest rush of the day for Georgia, I think. Gunnar Stockton had – no, he didn't have a longer 21. So it was Chauncey Bowens. So, it's a running back by committee approach here, and it saves legs. I think all these guys are talented and deserve snaps. It was a good way to keep, I think, that camaraderie, too, in the running back room where, these guys are all going to get snaps. Your time's going to come. Take advantage of it. Bo Walker, we had a sighting of him. He had 6 attempts later in the game. Just a 2-yard average. Young kid, former 4-star, who really flashed in spring, and then heard some good things over the summer in camp, too. But I think just with so many players ahead of him, it's going to be hard for him to really get some snaps here. But you know how things go, guys. And Georgia's had its fair share of injuries in the tailback room, of course. So it couldn't be. It could be a situation where he has to step up at some point. But I think he's showing some things that he has the talent to do it. Let's go defensively here. So really impressed with just how and Marshall, they weren't doing anything specifically that I think Georgia was threatened by. No surprise to you all, I'm sure. But the way that this front was getting off the ball was really eye-opening to me. Really eye-opening. Because you have, Kristen Miller. Like, these guys were replacing Michael Williams and Jayla Walker and Nazir Stackhouse and Warren Brinson. How is Georgia going to do it? Well, they recruit really, really well, and they're very, uber competitive in practice, and it kind of keeps these guys developing, even though they're not getting meaningful snaps. And that is a big thing here, I think, for Elijah Griffin. He's playing behind Kristen Miller and these guys up front and Jordan Hall, but he gets in and he flashes, makes a tackle for loss. You can see he takes up so much space. He was an immovable object on that play. A certain play I'm talking about. It was his first tackle in a Georgia uniform. That's the thing. You want him to get confidence, want him to show his teammates he can do it in the big stage in Sanford Stadium with the ESPN cameras rolling. So that's a good flash for him. I think he is big and this is a group that's probably going to go through injuries here and there. So you want depth. Obviously, big guys are a premium again on this side of the ball too. You want Elijah Griffin, I think, to be the best he can be, at least as a true freshman here, and that will be really huge for Georgia to come in SEC schedule time because there's some really good fronts in this conference. Was really excited for Gabe Harris, made a huge play right on the first drive and had a good day. You want to see, I think, some more, pass rush. Like, they were living in the backfield, but I think you want a guy who you can line up over their best tackle when you get an SEC schedule that you have an advantage on. So who is that guy? We're not going to know. We're not going to know until I think we get to Tennessee. They have some injuries up front. Tennessee does. So we'll see how Georgia plays against them, and they can take some advantage too here in a couple of weeks. But overall, let's move to linebacker room too. These linebackers are incredible. We talked about it over the offseason. You're getting All-American mentions for these guys, All-SEC, of course, for Raylan Wilson and C.J. Allen and Chris Cole. C.J. Allen was a captain for this game. He is your classic middle guy. He is calling Glenn Schumann's plays. He is making sure everyone's in the right place. And what I think that does for Raylan Wilson is really opens him up to play free because he had an awesome day. And in my opinion, the best day on the defense. 7 tackles, 2 tackles for loss of 3 yards total on those. He's all over the field, takes great angles. And overall, dude, Georgia just tackled well today, which that was a big point for Kirby Smart coming out of fall camp. But he's talking about, the tackling issues. He didn't think Georgia was up to standard there. Me and Artie Lynch, we think that was more of a push to his team to get them to really focus in on that aspect. And today, all things considered, just tackled really well. Raylan Wilson, I think, with the best day, though. Chris Cole, 5 total tackles by himself today. He's so multiple. One of my favorite players to watch on this defense, I think, bar none, just because he can line up in so many areas. not necessarily a Jalen Walker type. I think he's even better in pass coverage, to be honest with you. He's so long and fast. He had a good day, right? CJ Allen, just he's the workhorse, man. 4 tackles, got the guys in the right spots. This run defense played really well. I think they averaged like 2 yards a carry. Look at it here. Yep, 2.5 yards a carry on the day, 31 attempts. That's what Georgia prides itself on, stopping the run. You know, all we heard was Georgia was really bad rushing the ball. They were really bad stopping the run, or really bad as far as Georgia's standard goes on defense and stopping the run last season. It was weird. It made you question what other things kind of went into that. But you start off the season with at least a bar that you said was 2.5 yards rushing per carry, and that's what you want to build on here and look back at. Hey, I've seen you guys do it, and as we face better competition, just put it together. It's something you've done before, and I know you can do it. And guys like this Trey Scott is going to be preaching to his guys. Get back to individuals here. KJ Bolden, man, KJ Bolden, 5-star flip from FSU, who's beating Alabama, or they were when I was going live. So Bama's in trouble, big trouble. They might have even lost by now. Let's see. Let's check it. I know you guys are watching too. Are they? Yes, Alabama down 31-17. 14-point favorites and drop one at Doak Campbell. What must it be like to lose to Florida State? That's incredible. I mean, people were crowning Alabama as top 4 seed in the playoff. Man, week 1 this year has been unkind to folks. That's crazy. But back to Georgia, KJ Bolden. He is a guy. Last year gets a lot of snaps, the most snaps out of true freshman on that defense. A lot on his plate this year with Malachi Starks and Dan Jackson departing to the NFL. Can he take on the role of a leader and guys to help these younger, because it's a very young secondary overall, help the younger guys be in the right positions and still play fast and play free. And he played really well today, man. He's just all over the field. And even when Marshall was throwing balls away, he was almost always near them. And then, of course, gets his first block punt, right? And Georgia's trying that out. Man, they're like, okay, we have a chance to block a punt here, and it's early in the game. We don't really necessarily have to do it, but can we do it when we need to later in the season? And his speed off the edge is just incredible. And Terrell Foster was, to his credit, in there too. It was awesome to see this defense fly around and tackle. And I'm a defensive guy. I love watching that stuff and fly around and tackle, wrap up, be in the right spots. That's what you want to see. Execution in these games like this against a team like Marshall. You want to see execution. Penalties-wise, just 2 for 15. Right, 34 minutes of possession. Third down efficiency be something I think George and Kirby Smart are really going to address. Now, this is overall, of course, and this includes in garbage time, but it's 6 of 16. You were 3-3 on fourth, but 6 of 16 is not where Georgia wants to be. You want to be at least around 50% if you can. That's winning. That's championship football. They weren't that today. So that's one thing we can point at to where they definitely want to improve and get better at. I think a part of that, too, is just from a receiving standpoint is making the line to gain with your routes, because so many times it's kind of the last thing guys think about. And oftentimes that ends up into a bad spot to where you're not even making the line to gain on a third down. And then special teams wise, let's touch that. I might even go back to corner, but special teams wise, Drew Miller put up a really good performance. And I think he deserves a mention here because, Brett Thorson, the All-American's out, and this was his only second start. He started against Notre Dame, right? And he didn't have a great game in that one. I think he was under 40-yard average. And then he comes in today and has a really good one. 6 punts, 48 average, long of 54, had one touchback, but he had 2 inside the 20, and he had 3 punts of at least 50 yards. So good on Drew Miller, former number 1 punter. I mean, he's got the skill set, we know. And then Peyton Woodring, 1 for 1, 43. He's automatic, man. So it'll be good to see that special teams unit continue there, and especially with Zach Branch back there in that aspect. So I'm really optimistic about that group too. I think we'll end it there. We'll get back and watch the tape and get back for some shows next week to talk about it with Arthur Lynch. Couldn't be here today, but he'll be back with us next week, former Georgia tight end, to help us recap some things from this game. We'll talk about Austin Peay, of course, and we'll look around the league, especially in the SEC with Alabama, Tennessee. Alabama, of course, went down. Tennessee got a big win over Syracuse. Got LSU and Clemson coming up, actually kicking off soon. So we'll watch that one. Then also we'll talk from the national scene, of course, Ohio State and Texas. We got to look at that one too. So thanks to everyone for joining in. UJ Football Live Instant Takeaways, Georgia Marshall. Check out the NIL store, Georgia NIL store, officially licensed apparel in partnership with a lot of the athletes we just talked about today. So make sure to check them out. You get 20% off your order when you use the code UGA Live. Appreciate your time, everyone. It was a good day in Athens, Georgia, and I hope you enjoy your weekend and some more college football.